An intellectual carrot, the mind boggles.
You see? You see? You're stupid minds. Stupid! Stupid!
Earth has had Santa Claus long enough. We will bring him to Mars.
I've been afraid a lot of times in my life, but I didn't know the real meaning of fear until I had kissed Becky.
One thing will be clear. It's not for man to interfere in the ways of God.
It's alive. Oh, it's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Earth vs. Soup, episode 126. I'm Aaron Pollier.
And I'm Darlene.
We watched a bad movie today.
Monstrosity, also known as The Atomic Brain. So I would suggest you watching it not in color.
Yeah, you know, the version that we watched was on Amazon Prime. Correct? Or was it on Amazon? Yeah, it was on Amazon Prime. And it was fake color. We watched a movie before, and I forget which movie it was, that had this kind of false colorization to it.
This was far worse than that one on it.
This was far worse. So it was difficult to watch because of that. Have you ever seen this movie before, Darlene?
No. It was also difficult to watch because of the narrator.
Okay. But
you
seen
need
it.
to explain.
Yes. I have seen it because it was on an MST3K. Watching it non-MST3K was difficult, but there's lots of behind-the-scenes things that I kind of want to talk about before we start in on the plot.
Well, I probably did not watch it on your
MST3K?
Because it has the word brain in it. And if you remember right, you destroyed me with one, what was that?
The Brain That Wouldn't Die, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to watch it for this.
I literally drooled on the floor watching that one.
Okay, so this was 1963, but it was actually filmed in 1958.
58. The original budget was $25,000, but ended up $40,000.
Okay, and the company that was making it went bankrupt in the middle of filming it, and the director ended up quitting, and the producer ended up having to piece together a movie based on what was shot. Now, what resulted was a mess, to put it lightly. But one of the things that is important about the background of this movie is the director of the original stuff. The original director was Joseph Maskely.
The 5 C's of...
He wrote a book.
The 5 C's of Cinematography, Motion Picture Filming Techniques Simplified, and was released January 1st of 1966.
It has never been out of print. It is considered one of the quintessential books on cinematography. This guy knew what he was writing about. He is highly regarded in the world of cinematography and cinema overall. He worked on Project Crossroads.
Yes,
correct?
But before that, he worked in during World War II for the U.S. Army on training films, newsreels, project reports, and technical films.
Okay, so he wasn't a dramatic filmmaker, but he was a skilled filmmaker. Then after the war, he worked on Project Crossroads. I know about that.
Operation Crossroads,
which, if you will recall, I'm sure that we have talked about it at least a few times.
He shot aerial footage of the first H-bomb tested at Bikini Atoll for the Air Force.
Yes. So he was important in that as well. Now, does that translate to this movie? I will say, before we even get to that point, because I always say that we try to be positive and where we can in these films, that Joseph Maskely's skill in filmmaking actually does come through in what footage there was filmed. There are certain shots in this film that firmly don't belong in this movie, that are just way, way, way too good. Way too good.
But then you have the black screen behind that was definitely after filming.
Oh yeah, there's there's reshoots that characters are filmed against the Black Void. They're in the Phantom Zone from Superman, where it's clear that this was done after the fact. Um, Now, what's this actress's name? Marjorie.
Marjorie.
Marjorie Eaton is in this as the star as Mrs. March, and she was in quite a bit of different movies. But you may know her as the Emperor from Empire Strikes Back. She actually played an uncredited role as the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back. Believe it or not, that is actually true. Otherwise, she was just in a ton of different things. Uh, the other character that I kind of thought stood out, at least actress wise, was Judy Bamler, who plays Bee in this. Um, she was actually born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, so like an hour away from where we live. And she's still alive today, at least as of this taping.
Erica Peters that played Nina did well too.
Yes, she did well, but I didn't really think that her filmography really stood out. I mean, she started on a ton of stuff, have no doubt. She's in like House of the Damned. She played in Death Valley Days. I see. Let's see here, Untouchables TV series. But yeah, nothing super outstanding, I would say. The only thing that I found out about her was that she was actually born. She was actually born in Kaliningrad, which is that weird Russian chunk of land that is actually outside of Russia that you have to like drive through other countries to get to. It's by Germany. All of her family was killed by Russians during the war, which is she like firmly hated the Russians. That's the only thing I really found out about her that really stood out. But I really wanted to talk about the director and how this movie basically fell apart, and it likely shouldn't have actually been made. It shouldn't have.
Well, somebody had to recoup money.
Did they recoup any money on this?
I don't know.
I bet you they lost more money in like the reshoots afterwards. But let's get into the plot, and then we can talk about the things that worked and didn't work. Spoiler again, much of this film does not work. But we can sum up this film's plot fairly simply.
Well, it starts with a very long narration.
Yeah, most of the film is actually narrated.
And he keeps going.
Going and going. And here's the thing. Here's the thing about narration. We have seen movies where narration is fun because it is crazy. And I can only name one director that did funny narration because it is so ridiculous, and that's Ed Wood movies. The narration is you still don't need it, but it's so over the top, weird and bizarre, like just this is not how human beings speak, that it made it worth listening to. This is just banal.
This was like a teacher. Bueller. His there is.
You felt it was monotone.
It wasn't monotone, but it was at that point of. Sometimes I just I was trying to tell you, the narration just made me go, oh crap, and then your mind is set into that.
Yeah, but okay, so you immediately knew something was wrong with the narration, but you don't get that from, like, let's say Plan 9 from Outer Space, where the narration was just so weird. And Criswell, it's Criswell talking,
Criswell.
Or from Night of the Ghouls, Criswell narrating.
I mean, I like the Planet Earth books, DVDs by
Attenborough.
But this one didn't even have,
Well, here's the thing. What it's narrating is it's needed for the movie because there are so many scenes that weren't done, and that in order to progress the plot, you need to have narration basically telling you what the characters are thinking, because there's no time or scene where they can actually explore what they're thinking.
And the audio was bad.
Oh, well, the audio wasn't done. Everything seemingly was ADR'd after the fact. They just got people to come in and tape their lines. And what's weird is, and see, we're not even talking about the plot because the plot is so boring, but when you have these ADR lines, the sound effects are clearer than the actual ADR lines.
And that's why you probably had the frogs and the cicadas in the background that you could hear.
Her stockings rustling on the stairs. Like, you could hear stockings rustling, and you're like, is this brilliant or just awful? I don't know what.
And
like,
the narration isn't like there's some narration that gets me laughing because they're like, he puts down a sponge, and you're seeing that as they're talking. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he's describing what you're saying. But like, one of the first things that's narrated is the secret of eternal life just around the corner. You know, okay, fine. That sounded a bit like Ed Wood narration type, Ed Wood style narration.
But Ed Wood's person would have done it
with more. Or Ed Wood, it would have just continued to be weird and weird and weird. But that was like, that kind of question, okay, comes into a scene with Ed Wood. Like, you lead into a scene with that question. Here, this question leads into more narration.
So yeah, but it wasn't even done like a question. It was like a...
I know. But anyway,
it wasn't even a...
okay, so...
We need to get into the plot.
Yeah. What we have is a doctor. His name is Dr. Frank. Ha, ha, ha.
And his first name on the person that's playing him is Frank, too.
Is it? Don't even care. Is it? Yeah, it's Frank. It's Frank Gerstle. He is a scientist, and I put scientist in massive air quotes, that has determined that through the use of a cyclotron and radiation, that he is able to reactivate neurons in dead brain matter, as long as it hasn't been dead for too long. In fact, he's able to reanimate nervous tissue overall. So, again, I'm going to sum up a whole bunch of different scenes here. Dr. Frank has been able to reanimate a dead human body by putting a dog brain in it.
That's
his dog man. He has been able to reanimate a human body with its own brain that's been dead for too long, and that's where we end up having
the girl
who's played by Marjorie Fisco. I actually should even look up what else she's done. She appears like a bride of Dracula in this. Oh, she's been in 2 different movies, Kipling's Women and Monstrosity. That's it. Is she pretty? Yes. Does she have anything to do in this movie except look pretty?
No.
Okay.
She just walks around.
Like the Bride of Dracula. She's in like a death shroud because she was taken out of her crypt. Okay. He is then able to... He figures that he can now transplant human brains from body to body and then reanimate the new body to basically get eternal life for whoever wants to have it.
And in the front of it, you see that he has no respect for life.
No, none at all.
None, because he gets into the crypt to get the girl's body. He allows the dog man.
He doesn't allow the dog man just kills a guard, but he doesn't really.
But he just walks off.
Yeah, he walks off. Yeah, I mean, do you think he would have tried to stop the dog man from killing him? Yeah, I actually do think so.
I don't think so.
What makes no sense is that he's looking for fresh bodies to experiment on. Why didn't he take the guard's body? Like, that makes total sense to do.
Yeah, and he walked over it.
So his lab is in the basement of what looks to be a plantation home in Louisiana. That's what it reminds me of. Everything else in this is like trying to link it to California. But this is a plantation home somewhere in the swamps. There is...
Low Mississippi.
There's Spanish moss in the trees.
Florida. It
Could be Florida. It
could even be southern Texas.
It could be. It could be. You're right. But it does not feel like California, does it?
No.
No. Okay. So
it's supposed to feel like a rundown, and it kind of does in some places.
His laboratory is in the basement of this home.
That's in a swamp.
That's kind of in a swampy area. Well, sort of. And the person who owns it is Mrs. March, who's played by the Emperor from Empire Strikes Back. She's old. She's not actually too old at this point in time when they filmed this. I think she's only like 50 or something, 50, 55. Ooh. She looks very old, though. Yeah, she was born in 1901, so when they filmed this, she was only 57.
Yeah, but
she looks incredibly old, doesn't she?
Yeah.
Like actually really kind of worn down almost. I'm a little shocked about that.
It might be her nose too. She's got a very large nose for her thin face.
But she does not look like she is 57 when they're filming this. She looks like she's in her late 60s, early 70s.
Yes, I will say that.
Either that's good makeup or I feel sorry for that lady, and I'm not trying to shame her. Okay, she has all the money in the world and feels that she has never been loved for anything except her money. So she wants to procure a young, supple, voluptuous body that she can then be loved for who she is. Now, the irony and the hypocrisy of that statement knows no bounds, because just go with it, right? This isn't even her body. She's literally saying she wants to have a beautiful body so men lust after her, but also says she wants to be loved for who she is, yet is ditching her old body. And she's a horrible human being, so why would anyone want to love her? She is a terrible person. In fact, she has a live-in boyfriend, sort of. Victor, who is clearly only there to try to get at her money, and this is the closest relationship in the world that she has. And she hates him. She despises him. He hates her. And he hates her because she is an awful bitch.
Person. Because one of your first scenes is that the radio going off about the murder in Green Haven Cemetery.
Yeah.
And I don't even know what she says, but I was just like,
screw you.
I would just, if I was that Victor, I would have smacked her in the face. That's all I could think of.
So this girl, Mrs. March, decides to hire 3 girls to come out and work, air quotes, with her as maids, live-in maids, live-in servants.
Something. One's from Austria, one's from England, and one's from Mexico.
Okay, the one from England is actually Judy Bamler, who was born in Ann Arbor,
and
which is weird.
None of these carry an accent.
Oh yeah, they do. Erica Peters is Nina, the Austrian. Yeah, she actually has an accent. Born in Kaliningrad. Anyway, and the woman Lisa Lang playing Anita, she doesn't even speak English. She has an accent.
That was very bad English, trying to say that you didn't speak
Darlene,
Spanish.
She might be the best actress in this movie. I'm not saying she was great or that she falls into the category of this works.
The person that played Annette?
Anita. The Mexican girl. I think she actually might be the best actor in this entire movie.
She might, because she had a hard role of trying to play a cat.
Yeah, she actually had to do work. Everybody else really doesn't do crap in this, acting-wise. Maybe Dr. Frank a little bit too, but we'll get to that.
So Miss March really plays a
bitch really well. Okay, well, you know what? Maybe you're slowly convincing me here that the acting actually might be better than this movie deserves as well. Besides, like, the directing and acting, do you think actually stand out enough? I know we're getting away from the plot again, but we're talking about it. Because Mrs. March, as awful of a human being as she is,
you hated her from the beginning.
That's acting.
You felt sorry for Victor until the incident where he's sizing up B.
Oh yeah, undressing her like
And
with his eyes. That was really.
And then you find he drinks a lot.
Okay, but I don't know if he stands out as a good actor. I would say you're right about Mrs. March being the actress is very good. Dr. Frank, honestly, there's a couple scenes where he's actually pretty good, but it also links into the scenes where he's actually acting have really good cinematography, like really subtle stuff, like
And he's supposed to
slow
be a
pan and zooms.
sociopath.
Yeah, but slow pan and zooms in these scenes where you could tell the director is actually very skilled, and that's where those scenes stand out as being not deserving to be in this movie. It actually deserves to be in a better movie.
So, talking about his acting, did he come across as like
A sociopath?
the American Psycho
No,
person?
we didn't. No, he didn't.
Is
What he
something-
came across as is just a bad human being. That he was wanting to develop his science, regardless of the human cost. Is that a sociopath? Not really, because he clearly cared about certain things. Like, he cared about that cat. He cared about the cat because it hated Mrs. March a lot. But he cared about the cat. I'm
enough to do what he did to that poor cat.
He still cared about the cat. He still cared about the cat. Is he an awful human being? Yes, but I don't think he's a sociopath. Anyway, man, I just want to skip over most of this. Okay, so we have these three girls that come out there. Mrs. March inspects them in the nude, and they deal with it.
Anita, the
Mexican girl.
She gets taken off the list because she's got a birthmark.
She's imperfect. She's flawed.
And
she's nothing. Get rid of her.
Where if you're watching the colored version that we had, it really like pinged me out because that looked gray blue at the time, and
yeah, it didn't look good. But
and I didn't understand that it was a birthmark until they started like something got talked about with it or something.
Yeah, that she's imperfect. She's awful. Get rid of her. She's killed.
She's brought down by Victor to Dr. Frank.
Yep.
And crossed her brain into...
her brain is thrown out.
The cat's is put into hers.
Yeah, so now
the cat has no brain.
Yeah, now the cat's body is being kept in suspended animation, but the actress that played Anita is now pretending to be a cat who ends up clawing out one of the eyes of B in this movie.
One of her eyes.
And she ends up like falling off the roof at one point.
And almost killing
Nina,
who went to the roof to
get her down because she didn't know that she was a cat. She just thought Anita had lost her mind.
I got one point to say on this one.
Okay.
That was my cats did not like
being
our cats.
Yeah.
Did not like the cat noises, and they were real cat noises.
Yeah.
But a human would not make those, including the purring.
Yes.
Because we don't have the vocals. Even if we had the brain.
Yeah, we'd just be like, it would sound really strange at the very least. So yeah, the cat is kept in suspended animation, and then later on, we end up getting Mrs. March chooses Nina because now she's the last like unflawed female.
And Nina has requested Victor to help her get out of it.
Yep, and Victor is killed.
Is stabbed in the back.
Stabbed in the back of the head with a knitting needle by Mrs. March.
Yep.
So Nina is made the inheritor of Mrs. March's estate because Mrs. March is assuming that she's going to wake up in Nina's body.
And there was a disgusting scene about her having to dress in those clothes.
Oh, while Mrs. March watched,
and there was some kind of something that Mrs. March says, or maybe it was the narration that was like, it was her it was like that was her body, her.
Yeah, admiring how she would look from the outside.
And
or
it just
something
was
like that.
just
It was
so
yuck.
tactless.
It was yucky. It was just yucky. So anyway, Mrs. March goes downstairs, and Frank understands that he's going to basically get screwed over in all this, Dr. Frank, because once Mrs. March is in that other body, she's just going to either off him or cut his funding. Either way, he doesn't like it. So he ends up putting Mrs. March's brain into the cat body and tells Nina, hey, tell you what, since you inherited all the money, I will keep you alive. I'll keep you sedated so you can be woken up now and then to sign things to keep my research going, but this is important. And fuck Mrs. March. Excuse my language, because God, I really don't like this movie.
Mrs. March, the cat,
locks him in his experiment chamber and turns on the radiation, and
he goes
cooks his skin right off
to the skeleton.
Yeah, and all he is a skeleton after a while. The house explodes.
B
runs.
Stumbles down.
B dies. She dies by stumbling into a piece of electronic equipment
in the lab
because
she's trying to rescue Nina.
And then Nina gets out and runs away as the house burns down. The cat follows.
The end.
The end. I am done with this plot. I don't want to talk about this plot anymore. It's dumb. And it's because it's almost all narrated. I just hate it. I hate it. Is it as bad as some of the other films that we've watched on Earth vs. Soup? Like the propaganda films?
No, the propaganda films are exactly
Is this as
that.
bad as Creeping Terror,
Terror,
Darlene, to you? Because you always hold up Creeping Terror as like the worst film you've watched of all of these, besides the propaganda ones.
This would be right on top, a little bit above Creeping Terror.
Yeah, it's a little above because there are things that are good in this.
I will say this, it did not, the same film was not used twice, even though you did have a film of, we're watching the old lady walk down the stairs, who's in a wheelchair, walk down the stairs meticulously to the basement.
Yes, it's like 40 seconds of her just walking downstairs, and you're like, we get it. We get it. This could have been 10 seconds.
And the poor girls are waiting for her to go somewhere so they can
try to escape.
But
like we said, there are things that actually work in this.
And there's things that don't.
Well, okay.
The girls are locked in a room, and they got a window.
And they don't try to escape.
And
it's not a far drop. It's not a far drop.
I would have went out that window.
But again, let's start with the positive. The things that actually work in this movie. The direction. The cinematography in this movie. Not every scene. Because you can tell there's certain scenes that were filmed afterwards, or they were really badly chopped up in the editing process to try to make a movie work. But there are certain scenes in this that it's like, yes, the director, Joseph Mascelli, you can tell this man was skilled. He did a good job in these scenes. And specifically where like Dr. Frank is monologuing in the basement near the end of the movie, there's this slow pan and zoom that's slowly closing in on his face as he's getting a little more riled up. And you're like, oh, fantastic. That actually took thought to set up this like camera track, because it's not just slowly zooming in on him. The camera is actually moving around slowly too. And so it's there's always this sense of movement of getting closer and closer. And it's, I don't know, out of this entire movie, that scene stood out so much that it made me want to look up about this director. And that's how we started finding out that this guy actually has a really long career working for the government as a director. Does that translate into like dramatic directing? Obviously it doesn't. But the fact is that this guy wrote this incredibly important book and is highly regarded in cinema. How in the hell did he make this movie? It's because it got cut up in editing and by the producer, by Jack Pollocksven, the guy that produced it and then did the uncredited directing on the
I wonder
shots.
what the original screenplay
was,
because it's really not.
It's a movie. It is a movie. It is very bad. The plot is bad. It barely holds together, and only because of narration. and the narration isn't good. So, to me, the screenplay had to be better. You're right. I wonder what the screenplay's like. I also get the feeling that much of what this movie is trying to do was done better by other movies. And I don't want to just start pulling out movies immediately, but like Plan 9 from Outer Space does far better with narration because it actually makes it interesting because of how weird it is.
There's comedy that they use the narration as a comedy at some time.
Yes.
I do remember some kind of movie that did that.
Yes. I don't know. There's other movies that did better. But like I said, there's certain scenes again where the acting is good. And Mrs. March, you hate her immediately. And that's a credit to the actress. That's a credit to the actress. The girls that play the hired help in this, the Anita, Bay, and Nina, out of all three of those, Lisa Lang, the girl who played the Mexican girl, I think did the most because she had to play a cat. And she had to demean herself being petted on the head and things. And I'm going to give her respect for actually giving a performance.
I've got to say that scene where Nina is chasing her across the gables.
Yeah.
On the roof. That really looked like it was on a roof.
Yeah.
And it kind of scared me.
Yeah. So like, yeah, there are things that do work in this. Now what most of the rest of the film does not work. It is fair enough. I'm not going to go through the laundry
dog
list.
man that had fake teeth.
That was really bad makeup effect. But hold on, before we start in on the laundry list, let's make it not a laundry list because we can rag on this movie for an hour and a half. What's your top thing that does not work in this? Because
the top thing that does not work.
The top thing, Darlene. What is your top thing that does not work?
God, that's just like whether it's the narration or whether it's the crappy coloring.
Okay, I don't think the crappy colorization is the fault of the filmmakers. So let's
whoever colored it did it horrible.
But let's leave that out.
So it would be the crappy narration.
The really crappy narration.
Because it just made me not even want, right off the beginning, it just made me want to walk out of the...
The narration was awful, but I don't know if I would say that's my top one. I think my top one is the fact that the overall structure of the movie doesn't hold together with the way it is a story, but it's so poorly structured and put to and I can't even describe it without actually having you see this movie, folks. Like the way this movie is put together, you can tell there should have been more.
But you couldn't call it like Pabst Blue Ribbon is a beer.
It isn't a movie.
You can't really call it.
This isn't the Dacia Sandero of cars. It is Car. There's nothing wrong with it, but there isn't good. No,
This is below that.
This is far below that. This is bottom tier. This is awful.
But it's not as bad as Creeping Terror.
No, it's not as bad as Creeping Terror. It isn't as bad as Rocket Attack USA or Invasion USA.
Those are by their own category in my...
Those propaganda films are just, God, awful.
They're on their own.
But I would just say the overall structure of the movie just does not work. I think that's like my top thing. It just doesn't feel like a movie. It feels like it is 80% there.
It feels like somebody took some film here and there and there and there.
Yeah.
And then tried to string
it together. See, here's the comparison, though. Creeping Terror felt like a movie. As bad as it was still a movie. This is 80% to being a movie. I think as a structure, this is worse than Creeping Terror. Even though Creeping Terror fails in so many more aspects.
Creeping Terror is below this.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree. I'm just saying my top thing in this is the structure. It is just terrible.
Like I said, it did not do the same footage.
Twice.
And when they did it twice in Creeping Terror.
It did it twice right in a row. I want to bet that there's some footage in this that was used twice. And I think it was probably with the dog man creeping around. But here's the thing, it wasn't used back to back
like that one,
like
that
in Creeping Terror. Like, oh, it's the dance scene. It's the same dance scene over and over and over again. So I don't want to keep ragging, because here's the thing about Earth versus Soup. We want to celebrate movies in general, even the really bad ones. We want to celebrate because these movies influenced us all in some way, shape, or form. They've made us smile or laugh, or at least pushed us in a certain direction to explore other films. Like, yeah, this isn't going to stop me. I've seen this before on MST3K. It was better on MST3K because they made fun of it. But I'm going to celebrate this movie still. I'm still going to celebrate it because even though they failed at making a movie, the director, well, the uncredited director, the producer, the person who funded this movie and wanted this movie made, his company failed, went bankrupt, and he said, screw you, I'm still going to make it. And that kind of dedication, I can get behind.
with pieces, though.
He had a vision.
We've watched Doctor Who, those ones that are broken,
Yeah.
that they don't have it. They would blank out the screen, and if they could put dialogue in there, they did.
Or stills.
Or
still
stills.
Images.
They would.
Yeah, but this guy wanted to release a movie. Well, Doctor Who, when they're trying to do these lost episodes, they understand that you know that it's a lost episode, that none of the footage is there, that they're trying to show you a piece together, a structure. Okay, that is not what this movie is. This movie isn't supposed to be that. It's supposed to be a movie, and it isn't. But I'm saying I respect the fact that the producer
tried to do
it with what he had, to give the actors and actresses their time on the screen that they deserved, and the director credit where credit's due, because again, some of the stuff that the director did in this, Maskelly, fantastic.
I gotta say that the setting was even though it was supposed to be somewhere else, that house was creepy.
It was nice.
And there was...
Okay.
I go, why do they have curtains for doors?
Hold on then, Darlene. We should add that into our It Works, because I think we both agree that the sets in this movie, which include the props, like the little set dressing pieces, was good. Like, that was actually a really good manor home set. Even that staircase that she had to sit there and walk down for 45 seconds. Like, that looked nice. That honestly did, correct?
Yes, but I would say watch it in black and white, not
sure. If
in
you
the color.
find like something that's strangely colored, don't watch it. Don't watch it.
It really jars you.
I can't remember the other film that we watched that had that, but it was like nauseating. It was this weird kind of green red.
And this one was blue red.
Yeah, it was
and gray.
Strange. Yeah, it was blue.
And when you had yellows up there, they were like...
But it did at least make the day for night shots look visually different.
Here they just look blue.
Yeah, but that's at least visually different from your typical black and white, where it's just day for night. You can't tell.
Unless they're so dark that you
Unless
can't
they're
see.
super dark. Yeah, I know. So, I mean, at the very least, there is that conceit towards day for night shooting. Watch it if you want, folks. We're not going to recommend it, are we?
No, we're not recommending it.
It's bad, but it's still better than the worst movies that we've watched. It is not at the bottom of the list. It's in the bottom 10%, let's say, of the movies. But if I had to give it a 1 out of 10, believe it or not, I'd probably give it a 2.5. Maybe even a 3, just because of the direction. It's still bad. It's like the pieces of it that don't work really don't work. But the pieces that do work kind of make it stand out in a weird way. I am going to remember this film for that one shot with Dr. Frank monologuing and the slow pan and zoom that actually was skillfully done. Like, I'm going to remember that. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit, maybe a 2 is better, but at the very least, there's things that make it spike up in my mind to go, okay, that might be worth watching. I guess if you're super interested in the art of cinematography and you want to watch a dramatic piece of work that this director did rather than only military stuff, then yeah, okay, because this guy wrote a very important book.
But do realize the writing.
It's not him writing it, yeah.
Yeah, it's not him writing it, and the
movie was butchered.
That's a good word to put it, was butchered.
So there's stuff in it that you can tell still has the spark of genius, but it's so cut up. We should leave it there. I don't want to waste any more time for our listeners on a movie that we're not going to recommend.
Considering it was only 64 minutes.
Yeah, considering it's only 64 minutes and we've already been recording for a little over 40. We don't know what we're going to be doing for the next couple, but I do think we're going to be doing some more Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi films in the next few episodes.
We bought some.
Yeah, we got a hold of some old ones. I think we're going to end up doing some more Universal horror because we've gotten a hold of some more of those and a few Hammer horrors. And sprinkled in with all of that, we're obviously going to continue to come back to the well of 50s and 60s science fiction, which is our wheelhouse. We still have tons of these movies, though many of them are lesser known now that we're on episode 126.
We still got some classics to do, though.
Oh, we do have some classics to do. We still do, and that's why we save them. We're saving them. But we hope you enjoyed listening, folks. I'm Aaron.
I'm Darlene. Good evening.
And keep watching the skies.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.